to talk about two of the identity sorting dials, the fit dial and the certainty dial. And we use these dials when we're trying to decide how many and what type of categories and labels to use when developing a data collection tool that is going to collect social identity information. And let's use an example. Let's say that we offer services and we want to do a survey to help us understand what the level of client satisfaction is like for people who get involved with our services. And one of the social identities or demographics that we want to break out the levels of client satisfaction by is sexual orientation. So we have to figure out, what should we do when we design a survey that's going to ask people to check a box that lets us know what their self-identification is in terms of sexual orientation. Sometimes the impulse is to include as many possible different categories and combinations of sexual orientation so that everybody feels included. Everybody feels like they can find a box to check that really does reflect their nuanced self-identification about sexual orientation. And that's a really good impulse because we want people to feel included. However, one of the problems we have is quantitative data. Quantitative data is not great at making meaning from very, very small sample sizes or small groups of people. So one of the things that might happen is that we build a survey that's very inclusive and includes lots of different options, but then when we try and analyze or make meaning of that data, the people who have selected sexual orientation categories that have small numbers of people in them, the evidence that we get, the understanding of their experience, isn't always as statistically strong as the groups of people that have big numbers of people in their category. So this is a kind of push-pull decision that always exists. And we tried to make a tool, the social identity sorting dials, to help research teams or data teams have conversations amongst themselves and with communities and people whose data are going to be collected to try and understand which is best for this particular project and understand the pros and cons. So there's two dials, a certainty dial and a fit dial. And the certainty dial is a measure of how confident we feel that the result we have from our survey represents the entire group of people we're trying to understand. So we are, in this example, trying to understand how our clients feel about the services we're offering. What's the level of client satisfaction? And now we're not going to be able to get every single client that we've ever interacted with to complete our survey. Partly because that would cost a lot of money, partly because that would take a lot of time and a lot of resources, and partly because even if we took a lot of time and a lot of money, there's always going to be a certain number of people that don't want to answer our survey. So what we're going to have to do with our survey is take the results that are from the group of people who completed our survey, which is sometimes called our sample, and try and make meaning for all of our clients or everybody in the community, sometimes called the population, that we're trying to understand. And that is what certainty is trying to capture. How confident do we feel that the results of our survey represent the feelings or experiences of the entire group of people we're trying to understand? And the other dial, fit, is about the human experience of taking our survey. So how well do the people that we're trying to understand, how well can they see themselves in their options? So when they take our survey, do they see a box that makes sense to them, that feels like a good fit to them? So, bottom line, when we're trying to design a survey, these two things are usually in tension with each other. And the reason that they're usually in tension with each other is the decision to add more or fewer categories almost always pushes them in opposite directions. This is related to the fact that certainty, remember, that's how confident we feel that the results of our survey actually represent the real experience of the community we're trying to understand. Usually, in quantitative analysis, when we're using number data, the smaller number of people who have checked a specific box, the lower level of certainty we have that the results represent that entire community. And if we think about it, it kind of does make sense. So if you're trying to understand how bisexual people feel in terms of being satisfied with your services, if you ask 2 people who identify as bisexual how they feel about your services, you're going to have less information than if you ask 20 people who identify as bisexual. So if you ask 2 people, you're going to be less certain that the results from those 2 people are an accurate representation of all of your bisexual clients. But if you ask 20 people who identify as bisexual, you're going to feel more certain. So that's how certainty goes up and down in relation to the number of people in the box. So if you ask, what is your sexual orientation, and you provide in your survey lots of options, you're more likely to have people taking your survey see an option that feels like a good fit to them. But because you have more options, you're going to have more boxes with a small number of people in them, so you're going to have less certainty. If you do fewer options, it's reversed. Fewer options means less fit, more certainty. So let's look at a specific example. We're going to stay with client satisfaction and sexual orientation. Let's just look at 2 possible options. If you want to say, what is your sexual orientation, and give 2 options, straight or not straight, that's one possibility, and I'm in no way saying that's a good possibility. It's just a possibility. It could also be straight and LGBTQ+. It could be LGBTQ+ and not LGBTQ+. There's many, many options. So I'm not, in this example, talking about what the options should be. Another option is to say, what is your sexual orientation, and ask, 6, 7, 8. And so fewer options is going to give you less of a chance, less likely that most people that look at this data collection tool are going to see themselves in one of the boxes, but you're going to have more certainty. You're going to feel more confident that these results, the fact that 80% of people who said they were straight feel a high level of satisfaction, you're going to feel more certain about that. So let's look at the next slide. Certainty is sometimes expressed as plus or minus. So 80% plus or minus 2 percentage points. That's a very high level of certainty. We are pretty sure that the results from just the people who took our survey generalize pretty well to our whole community, because we think that the results from our survey, which is 80%, have a plus or minus 2% level of certainty about how well they generalize. And you can see that these plus or minuses get a lot bigger in the second option, even plus or minus 22, plus or minus 15. The level of certainty gets a lot lower, sorry, I'm so sorry. The level of certainty gets lower. We're less certain. that we have the exact right result for people who identify as asexual. And the reason for that is that there's a much smaller number of people who checked this box in our survey. So that is how, if we give few options, people are less likely to feel included or seen or have a good fit with our survey, but we're going to have a lot of certainty. We're going to have the plus or minus numbers are going to be very small. And if we ask more options, we're going to have a better fit, more chances that people who take this survey see themselves in this survey, feel included in this survey, but we're going to have less certainty. The plus or minuses for some of the categories are going to be very high. And the reason why is that there's a small number of people that checked that box.